Good evening, councillors, staff members, members of the public, and anyone else who's joining us online. I'll declare this agenda briefing open. And for anyone who is joining us, these agenda briefings are just an opportunity to go through the agenda for next week's, and no decision will be made. Thank you to the Deputy Mayor for looking after me for the last few weeks. I would like to say that I feel very refreshed, but I did get in at about 3 o'clock this morning, so not super refreshed. Still, we are all here, and Councillor Turner is joining us online from the elected members' point of view. I do note the Director is not here with us at the moment. We have Mr Ranson representing her. Thank you. I have received one declaration of interest, councillors. That was from Councillor Ben Andrew. It is a financial interest on item 10.3.2, as Councillor Andrew has provided services for one of the submitters in that tender document. Was there any other submission, any other declarations of interest, councillors, for any agenda item? 10.3.2 was one of the tenders. Oh, it's 10.3.2, right, Councillor Andrew? Yeah. Any other declarations of interest, councillors? Very good. Thank you, councillors. We will work through the agenda. So we're moving to 10.1.1, and I believe there was a conversation around this last week, and this has a recommendation there now to refer this back to the Policy Committee. But was there any questions on this item, councillors? Thank you. That's elected members' entitlements. And Councillor Turner, I can't see you, but obviously you can hear us. I'm just checking in again.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Just shout out if you have any questions. Thanks, Councillor Turner. Thank you. I think that's fine. Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not sure if Councillor Turner still wanted to discuss it, but I think that there was a bit of a consensus of question whether or not councillors would also have access to the Southwest Sports Centre as part of and being an elected member, and it's no different than as we receive a parking permit, sir?
Sure, I think that the whole item is the recommendation there was to send it back for further conversation at policy, but I will let the CEO make any comment on that. Yeah, sure. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Steck, for the question. We've recommended that following the discussion last week that it goes back to the Policy Committee for further discussion, and certainly we can discuss that. What I have done but following last week's meeting is reach out to the City of Melville, who do have adopted policies around providing devices to elected members. So, and the process around that. So, I've got those now, and that will be presented to the Policy Committee for discussion. And elected members are welcome to raise the other matter as well.
Councillor Turner, did you have any question on that, or are you happy for that to roll through that Policy Committee?
No, good, thanks. There was some details about why you couldn't have the membership to the Southwest Sports Centre.
Sure. Thank you. Moving along to item 10.2.1, which we will deal with next week, councillors. This will just be requesting some voting delegates to join that. 10.3.1 is the schedule of accounts paid. Any questions on this one, councillors? Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor. 10.2.1.
Oh, sorry, yep.
There's two date mix-up there. The Wednesday, 9th of October, and then it's pity, but the one below is Monday, the 9th of October. I think the date should be Wednesday.
Sure, and I think it then says Monday 9th a bit later on too. We'll clarify that. It will be the Wednesday the 9th. It is, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Ramesh. And I think in the background it's on the wrong ones there. We'll get those ones cleaned up. Thank you. So, councillors, there are a couple of, so there was no questions in 10.3.1. 10.3.2 is for the, it's the item there to enter into that service agreement. Now, there was obviously a confidential attachment, so if there are any questions on the confidential attachment, we'll go behind closed doors And if so, we can do that at the end on all of these items, but I'll just see if there's any actual questions on the item itself. Oh, Councillor Andrew, you should probably leave the room, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Andrew, I do that a bit. Thank you. Questions, Councillor Steck?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I know that under our CEO budget there is a 10% on tenders, but what's the variation of, I guess, percentage-wise on this tender, if any?
Do you have that answer, CEO?
I don't, can you just rephrase the question? Sorry, Councillor Stack?
Will there be any real variations? I know that, you know, pricing's not always fixed, but what is the percentage of variations allowable?
If you're happy, Mayor, I'll probably just take that on notice. It would normally be around 10%, but there will be a specified percentage, but I'll confirm that prior to next week.
We can have a look at all of them on the different ones on that too, because some of them are 4A service-based and some are fixed. No, that's fine. Any other questions on 10.3.2, councillors? Thank you. Greg, do you mind grabbing Councillor Andrew for me? Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We're on 10.3.3. Thank you, Councillor Andrew. Any questions on this? I'm just seeing if the CEO might want to provide any guidance on any of these tenders any further on that. Did you just get some advice? I'm still happy to take that unnoticed, that previous question, CEO.
Yeah, so I think as I understood the question from Councillor Stack, it was around variations to the tendered price, and normally it would be 10%, but I'll confirm that, just I'll double check.
And that generally is for all contracts, isn't it?
Great. So any questions directly, again, same rules apply. If anyone was talking about any of the direct proponents here, we can go behind closed doors, but any general questions on item 10.3.3? Thank you, councillors, and the same applies with item 10.3.4. Any questions on the direct proponents? Or, we can go behind closed doors, but any general questions, happy to take. All
Can
okay?
I just,
Yeah, Councillor Turner, yes?
just about the increase in cost, is there a reasoning behind that, please?
See
Or
ya.
what are the main?
Sure.
I probably might just ask the Acting Director of Infrastructure maybe to answer that.
Yeah, thanks through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Turner, the original, when the project was put through for grant funding, we had, with the netball courts, received certain quotes on what it would be to get it refurbished and resurfaced. That was probably 2 years ago. So now that we've gone out to tender now, we've had the increased costs come through, and of course the prices had gone up.
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you. 10.3.5, the Financial Management Report. Thank you. 10.4.1. Disposal of a little bit of land there. Any questions? Thank you. Of course you can.
I'm assuming it's one of those drainage areas.
It looks like that, yep. Okay. Yep, probably. Okay. 10.4.2. I know there was a bit of conversation around this last week as well, councillors, but any further questions at this stage on this particular item? All good? And 10.4.3, any questions? All good? Yes, sure. Councillor Steele?
Question 3 about the Kambana Tourism Precinct and the Bicentennial Square.
Yep.
Suppose it's not related, but it just sort of is related. When are we going to get involved with those plans as a council?
Yeah, sure. We can ask for an update on where both of those are, if the CEO wants to provide something.
So in terms of Bicentennial Square, the Director of Sustainable Development probably can add to this, but we did discuss that briefly at last week's strategic session, because I think there was a question asked about the consultation. There's a couple of bits of work that need to be done in terms of Bicentennial Square. One is around the geotech and understanding what's under the ground, because that helps us understand what's possible with that site. And there's also some traffic management study that will also undertake the project for, and then the idea is to develop some concepts once you know what the geotech situation is. So, for example, if there's basalt rock that's in that immediate vicinity, it's going to limit what you might be able to do in terms of developing concepts that we can discuss with elected members, but also broadly with the community. The project's not due, I think the timeline for the project is March 2025. We'll get the original pieces of work done, and then that will help us develop some concepts that we can then start to have some discussions with, rather than having a blank sheet of paper or not understanding what's possible. Elected members also aware that we did have the UWA students, and we had that discussion. So we're starting that conversation, but we probably want those two bits of work to be done before we can properly engage with elected members in the community. In terms of the Kambana Tourism Precinct, there's, we've discussed that in the Tourism Working Group and about the evolution of that. There's clearly, and Andrew McRobert has been involved with discussions with the state government and with South West Development Commission about the cultural centre that potentially could go into Mangrove Cove. In this council here, we've had discussions around what else might potentially go in there. We know we've got the splash park, we've got that other infrastructure in there. We've also got the Powerboat Club as a significant piece of land that the state government owns that we're certainly having discussions with. So, loosely, what I've been saying is that there is an opportunity for that to develop into, with the Dolphin Discovery Centre on one side and Kambana Bay, and then Mangrove Cove and the assets that could be in there could be what's deemed a tourism precinct. Then you link round to, Coolanbiddy Wooler, and then, what's going to happen with, I think we've got the hotel going in, and how all of that Blair Street and Bicentennial Square looks. So the recommendation in there is just to revisit that once we know. I would think we're going to be in the current site and the museum for 3 to 4 years, and there's work that I need to do on the museum site to make that more fit for purpose for both the museum staff and, to perform that visitor services centre function as well. So I went over there today to have a look at the spaces and just to get a feel for that, how we might be able to do that. But pending council's decision, we'll look at that. Andrew, sorry, I don't know if Andrew, if you wanted to make any further comments.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, I think you've covered it very well, Alan. The only other piece of work that will be done on the geotech side of thing is looking at potential soil contamination given the previous marshalling yard use for that whole precinct. So that'll help inform the plan a bit more as well.
Follow-up question, Councillor Steele?
Yeah, it's going to be a question. I'm going to try and
Statement, one of those
state it
statement
as a
questions?
Statement question, but also,
Sure.
will the letter in that plan that we spent a lot of money on, will that actually be referred to? Because I think that was a very progressive report. Because I think sometimes when plans are being done without any councillors' input, it seems we might be going a bit backward and staff progressing with ideas that we don't have any input for, and I'm actually getting red warning signs. Thank you. So,
Thanks.
so
The question around the previous, because I asked the CEO about this as well, is that the Bicentennial Square, as we know, that National Master Inlet Plan, which we were on council when that came to us, it was some good work, and there's been some very other good works around both the city's done, and there's been some private plans done as well. So it's not about reinventing the wheel with some of these things, and I spoke to the CEO about that, and it's about gathering this information, and then how do we bring it together and start making that a reality. But CEO, have you going to make any other comment on that?
Thanks, Mayor. It's a really good point, and I think there's lots of planning that's been done around this city. We don't need to reinvent stuff. We just need to reference that, and we certainly will reference that. And the director and I have had that conversation, Mayor, as we've had that conversation. So we'll be absolutely using stuff that's already been done, but informing that with some of the other stuff that we need to do, and trying to make the best of the thinking that has been done already, and then bringing in any new information if we contamination, the geotech stuff as part of that. So because we want to explore all possibilities, but we don't need to reinvent.
And further, Mr Mayor, if I may,
Yes,
that in the Kambana Tourism Precinct, I asked the question, will we put the Three Waters Precinct in play? Because that's a key document from Jeepers, maybe 20 years ago. But it was a really good plan. And that was part of the cultural precinct as well.
Sure. These are all relevant, yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Steck. And I'll probably just reiterate that comment. We will, all of those things that are really important, and I know I've had conversations in the community around some of the planning that has been done from, previously. But the Director of Sustainable Development may want to add something further.
Through you, Mr Mayor. I can confirm that we are considering all previous documents as context for Bicentennial Square. Absolutely no preconceived ideas what will eventuate on the site, and we will certainly be bringing back to council concepts, ideas, and involve council in that process.
Thank you. Councillor Kozisek?
Yeah, just a query following in from Councillor Steele's comments about work that's been previously done. We did a traffic study on Blair Street 12 months ago, I think, so I'm just wondering why we're doing that again. That's one part of the question. The next one is the Kambana Tourism Precinct. If we go to page 161, paragraph 3rd from the bottom on that page, it talks about the draft tourism plan identifying a key recommendation to locate the visitor centre in an accessible location that enhances the visitor experience within the Kambana Tourism Precinct. That is not what we agreed upon in the Tourism Working Group. We agreed that it would be in the central CBD. So I'm sorry, I don't like that wording.
Sure. I haven't seen the draft tourism plan yet. Wasn't at that meeting last week, but I asked the CEO if he can make any comment.
So
on
I think that's the distinction between what the consultants did in their work and then the work that we've evolved to, and obviously the discussions, Councillor Kozisek, that we had around the data. So we've had the two trials, as you know, and the work that Compass did certainly talked about the number of visitors go to the Dolphin Discovery Centre. However, as we discussed, most of the people that come into the museum visitors centre, most of them come into the CBD. And if you think about the CBD as one location, there's far more people that come in to the CBD. So I think there's a distinction between the data that was collected in the consultation of the work that Compass did and the further work that we've done with the data that we had from the two trials.
I'm just wondering if that can be reflected in the word.
Yeah, we can look at that. Yeah.
Thank you. And
comment around the
traffic study?
Blair Street traffic study. You might not be aware of it, CEO. Can you
Yeah, I wasn't aware of the traffic study, but the Director of Infrastructure, Director of Sustainable Development will be able to answer that.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Since the previous work was done, the decision has been taken to look comprehensively at Bicentennial Square, and there are some other considerations sort of post that previous work. First one is, in terms of Bicentennial Square, the intent is to better link Bicentennial Square with the inlet. So the intent is to look at Blair Street again in the context of an activated area that is promoting pedestrian priority. And another strong consideration is the future of the bus station and potential location for that. So we are having to revisit quite a few things, and we're looking at updated traffic data.
Comment then, because what happened 12 months ago or 18 months ago with that thing, it was also commented that we would need to trial it going down to one lane for a good period of time to see the effect that it actually had. I know that was discussed at, yes, I think it was at when we were at Bunbury Football Club. It was very discussed then that we would trial that. So we just have to, that's the sort of question. Would we do that?
Sure. I think the question around that, I think we'll take the CEO and the director's word on there that there's no preconceived ideas going on there and that they're just gathering the information so we can have a very good conversation. And I'd imagine that'll come in some workshop forum once that's arrived sometime in the next few months, I'd imagine, Councillor Steele. So we can have those wider conversations there. Councillor Quinn?
While we're discussing Bicentennial Square, I'm just curious as to what have we done to address the antisocial behaviour around Bicentennial Square?
It's probably getting a little bit away from this, but I have allowed a couple other questions go, so we'll let that one go. Councillor Quain, CEO, I'm not sure if you've got any comment in this space. If not, we might have to take that notice.
Look, I think one of the things you look at when you look at Bicentennial Square is when it's activated, it is a completely different picture in terms of antisocial behaviour. I think with all of the things that we're looking at, from where buses lay up to the potential to activate that space, to what happens with the Graham Bricknell Shell, to what happens with we know we've got the hotel development going in there, to the possibilities of what the train station site could be. The activation will assist that enormously. I think we all see that when it is activated, and there is whether that's fares or other things that are in that space, that changes that look and feel of that place. So that's a key thing. If we get more people in there, we get more active lighting, we get that activation we're looking for, then I think that will go a long way to addressing some of those issues that we have currently.
Councillor Gassett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 61, second paragraph from the top.
161? No.
161.
Yep.
Did I say 161?
I think it's 61.
Okay. 1 century out. So it talks about the motion that was carried at the special electors meeting. Would we be able to actually state what the motion was that was carried, just for the record, which was to locate this visitor centre in the CBD? It was a pretty big meeting too.
It's just part of the wording. I guess it can be included in the wording in the background. There's no problems. No issues, Councillor Gassett. Further questions on this? Thank you. (10.5.1) is around, and I'm not sure if you've had the opportunity to speak about this at all, so I might just see if the CEO is going to make any comment about where this is at, or happy to open up to questions. I'm not sure if this was discussed at all last week. CEO?
So this wasn't discussed at the strategic briefing last week, Mayor. So the original decision was around agreeing in principle, and then from the council requested the CEO to do some further work on potential costings around the reuse of this rail car. So this report now brings that information back. I have had a discussion with our local member, and Mayor, as you know, you wrote to Minister Punch around this and around the city's intent. So the feedback I've had back from that is that, and that's included in the report. I've had discussions with Tim Wollaston from PTA, and he's got Boyup, who are Boyup Brook, who have one of the front carriages, so they're keen on getting the second carriage. This is around. This is not the front carriage. It's not the back carriage. This is the middle, one of the middle carriages. So it's probably it doesn't present in the same way that the front carriage or the back might. You can see our recommendation there. Tim from PTA is really saying he just needs a decision, so he's given us extra time to consider council's position. What we've tried to lay out is the costs, and it's, as you can see in the report, around, I would suggest it's probably somewhere around 350 to 400. We've got a figure of 400 in there. Our recommendation is, given it is the middle carriage, given there is another suitor that might take it, that the city not accept that, and that's entirely appropriate. We haven't got the carriage yet, and it could be put to to good use with the other shire. So that's probably where we got to. We haven't really tried to identify any other funding sources, because that's probably the other question that elected members may have. So that's certainly something that we could do. However, we still believe that there's probably better uses of council funds than perhaps taking this middle carriage, given that it has another suitor and could be put to good use.
Questions? Councillor Smith, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the CEO must have read my mind. So I won't ask that question of if there's any other source of funding. But did you mean Boyup Brook or Boyup?
I think it's Boyup Brook.
Boyup?
Oh, I said Boyup Museum then. You said
they've
Boyup.
They've got other rail infrastructure,
Apologies.
like Pollution Old Lady and so on.
Heaps.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I noticed the words were estimated. Has there actually been any costing done with any expressions of interest?
CEO.
So I might just pass over to the Acting Director of Infrastructure, who'll be able to provide some clarity in terms of the costings.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Mr. Andrews. The actual refurbishment of that, we've had estimates come through from our carpenters. The actual transport is correct. That is what Peace and Teeny have quoted on those charges. And the site development was an estimate given to us by our electrical and plumbing services. Until we know what the site is or where that site is, they can't give us a definite figure on those.
Councillor Andrew.
Considering that the Boyup Heritage and Rail Museum does have the front carriage, has there been consideration about loaning this carriage for 10 years until a point in time where we would like to use it? Just it would be very disappointing, I guess, to lose a piece of this, even though it's not a locomotive, but what opportunities are there out there to sort of explore some alternative methods for keeping it within the city's collection for the time being?
CEO.
To answer Councillor Andrews' question, we haven't considered that. That's certainly something we could have a conversation with. I think there is a deed that needs to be signed, and I think that's the urgency with PTA. Whether there would be an appetite for that to be loaned, I'm not sure, but I can certainly have that discussion between now and next week.
Councillor Stick.
Mr. Mayor, is this council aware that the original Leisure Lady is at Boyup, at the Boyup station? It's not in the station, I think it's actually in the historical section.
It's in there.
And are you aware that there's also an original old Leisure Lady coin? I've got one.
Might be worth a few dollars these days. We sell it and pay for this rail car. Any other questions on this one? Councillor Cassett.
Just, Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering why and how this idea about considering refurbishing it and using it for commercial use, such as a kitchen, why did this come about? And is it necessary? Can it just be a tourism draw card for people to review? Just bear in mind, to expand on the question, South Perth has a carriage and they've just enclosed it in a glass casing, or like a gazebo, so people don't actually access it.
Yeah, so Councillor Gassavin, I think obviously we had a conversation when this started, and it started probably from conversation with you about writing to Minister Punch, which at that stage it was just a matter of, as you've all seen the letter, about what opportunities we could have the rail car. Obviously, when that position came to council, council agreed to look into it, and I think the conversation there probably talked about, well, what would we do with it? I think what's outlined in the cost here, it talks about, well, there's obviously a cost with transport, there's an estimate to what would be refurb. If you didn't refurb it, there would be a cost with doing something with it, I guess, but I suppose that's just been provided on what advice was there, and as the CEO's indicated, it's up to council to determine that. If there was another usage or thought process, would probably have to get some idea around costing, but there would be some costs associated with it. But CEO, anything further to add on that? No, Mayor, I think you've covered that well. I think in the original discussion, following the letter and the discussion that did occur in, from council, there was the talk about how we might reuse that. So that's what we put an estimate in. But the other costs are all there. If you weren't going to do, if you didn't want to refurbish it at all, then the other costs are there for elected members to see. I think Councillor Gasser, maybe following on from what Councillor Andrew asked, and there was that whether that was stored somewhere else at the museum or whatnot, and that was a question. If we were to just get it in storage, it would be, at this stage, according to these costs associated, $40,000 to get it to where we need to get it to. And that may be somewhere where council want to do, but that's up to council's position next week to determine those things.
I just think we seem to be shutting it down pretty quickly just on the cost estimates. Sorry. Yes, sure. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, have we tried any source of funding or any other aspects before we close it down completely?
I think the CEO touched on that earlier, but I might just ask him to reiterate.
So I think, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor. I think in the Mayor's original letter, we did talk to our local member around potentially funding, and I think our letter talked about state government funding. Certainly in my discussions with the local member's office, that the issue around funding hasn't been discussed, and whether we want to try and seek other funding sources. The difficulty is going to be now is that PTA really need a decision, within a couple of weeks of our council meeting around whether the city's in or the city's out. To be able to then to clarify other funding sources within that time may be difficult. And what we've tried to set out is all of the reasons. It is not just about cost. It's not a locomotive. It's not the back. It is the middle, and whether that's if it was, would we consider that differently if it was the locomotive, potentially. My discussion with PTA is that they're surprised, given that we would want to, that particular one, that they understand the front or the back, but not potentially the middle. So we certainly can, the time frame is probably the most difficult point in between the discussion we had with PTA initially, and they've held off the deed for some time and been really fair with us around our considerations.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. It's a great pity because it does have a link to Bunbury. However, the carriage itself they would give to us.
Yes.
They would give this, and so the cost would be at this stage $40,000 to transport it and $20,000 to put it on a whatever at the depot.
So that's doing nothing, yes.
So
and
if
then
we
the other
decided just to take it because we wanted for future decision, that would be the minimum cost.
That would probably be, I wouldn't say minimum, at this stage, that would be the cost.
So you're correct, Deputy Mayor, that would be the estimated cost right now if we were to accept that, sign the deed and get it transported to our depot site.
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you. I believe that we do have this motion on notice, which I'm happy to take any questions now on rather than dealing with next week. If there's any questions around that. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Have we discussed this motion at all with our neighbours?
Haven't. CEO? Well, CEO, I'll ask you to.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mayor. No discussions, Deputy Mayor, with our neighbours. You can see I've got a very brief comment in there, but the general thrust of this is about investigating, and I'm comfortable with that. I think, you know, even in my short time in Bunbury, we've had lots of discussion around Bunbury and its surrounding area and how it's described in the sub-regional plan. You know, when you think about Bunbury in that context, you know, these are those 4 councils, including Bunbury, and we get described like that sometimes. So exploring how we might be able to use what's already in a state planning framework would be, I think, could be quite beneficial to the city of Bunbury in how we're seen from a sub-regional perspective. So I'm more than happy to look at how we might create opportunities to collaborate better amongst certainly those 4 councils that are part of that sub-regional plan.
I think why I paused, Deputy Mayor, is that some of this stuff probably is happening already, or definitely is happening already. It's probably more about bringing that as a formal position as well, formalising it so it's seeing what we are doing. But a lot of this stuff is already happening between, and we have a very good relationship, in particular with Harvey Dardanup and Capel.
Oh, sorry.
I was just really asking the question because Bunbury doesn't want to ambush anybody.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mr Mayor, I wonder why the word planning is in there. So what capacity is planning as against the Greater Bunbury Regional Scheme, which is the overarching document? So that's already set in stone by the state government, so...
There's maybe planning services and whether or not there's the opportunity to collaborate in some of those spaces as well and sharing of services. But CEO, I'm not sure if we've got any further add on that.
Thank you, Mayor. It is around that. So, you know, I've already had conversations with the CEO of Capel around their planning capability and, you know, at times they're stretched or they lose people to places like the city of Bunbury and then struggle to deliver some of their planning services. So we have those conversations regularly about, and even through the Bungeo group of councils, there is that resource sharing and how we perhaps can do things better across our region. So, you know, as CEOs, and, you know, I'm sure as elected members, we want to make sure that we're running, you know, efficient and effective councils and delivering services to our community at the best possible price. If there's more collaboration we can do that improves that outcome for ourselves and for our ratepayers, then we should explore those.
Does that include, if we get the digital sign on the highway, that we would include other councils on that digital screen, or would we just own the screen for ourselves? Because if it's going to be collaboration, will we be truly collaborating?
It's a joint approach there, but CEO might want to touch on that as well.
I think Councillor Steck's talking about the board proposal, which we've talked about, which I think I'm discussing with Minister Punch next week, so that's been finalised between all the Bungeo group of councils. I think if I just talk specifically about this motion, this is about investigating some of the opportunities, and as the Mayor's outlined, there's lots of forums that we're already in, and that the Mayor and I represent the city in, you know, whether it's the Bungeo group of council, whether it's the zone, etc. And I think this is about looking at other opportunities from both an administrative point of view, but also from an elected member point of view, so that you know, that collaboration between like-minded councils can continue, and we can explore what we can achieve as a wider group.
Councillor Cassidy?
Mr Mayor, I'm just wondering how and who's going to do this investigation. Is it going to be done by internal talent rather than go out to contractors or consultants?
I think the initial stuff will be asking our very busy CEO to be doing it, but when that report comes back, that may indicate who's going to be doing what and what resources that would require to put some of this stuff in. But happy to get the CEO to respond on that.
And certainly, you know, I did meet with Councillor Andrew and Councillor Brown around this motion because, you know, my concern was if we talk about the opportunities between, you know, that four group of councils or however many that is, you know, the risk is you could spend a lot of time and effort doing some of this stuff and get not a lot of traction with some of this stuff, because at the end of the day, we've seen lots of discussion around amalgamations, and it's got to, you know, those things have got to be driven by the community. This is about looking at investigating opportunities for us to work better as a group. So I don't see, in terms of that word investigate, that there's a significant amount of work that needs to be done. And if we link that to, you know, how we're described, you know, but the greater Bunbury region is described, well, maybe that's the way forward. So, you know, I don't see this as being something that needs a huge amount of work, but it does need a bit of thinking, and I'm happy to, you know, with the executive team to do that initial thinking, and then to have some of those conversations. You know, we've got some pretty good CEOs in this region that I'm sure have you know, these similar discussions, you know, most weeks.
Any further questions? Thank you. Thank you, councillors. I think that brings us to a close. Thank you all very much. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Councillor Turner. Declare this meeting closed at 6:11. Thank you all. See you next week.